All right, so starting here, our discussion of the main diagrams that will be addressed in your upcoming lab exam, which covers the central nervous system and special senses. So the first diagram here, it's of 5, so I will be rating the diagrams according to their degree of importance. All right, so this doesn't mean that the most important ones are gonna only be on the test and the other less important won't be on the test, but just for you to prioritize your work. So I am rating those diagrams out of 5 stars. All right, 5 stars means they are highly important, and as you go down, those are less important or they are gonna need less time to study. All right, so a 4 stars diagram, this is a diagram showing the ventricles of the brain. This is where the CSF is going to be circulating. If you remember, they have 4 main ventricles of the brain. We've got 2 C-shaped ventricles. Those are bilateral ventricles. They will be connected to the 3rd ventricle, which is located in the diencephalon. It's going to be located in the 3rd ventricle of the diencephalon and located between the pons medulla on one side and the cerebellum on the other. We have the 4th ventricle. If you remember, passing through the midbrain is the canal that connects the 3rd ventricle to the 4th ventricle. It's the cerebral aqueduct. It's a 4 stars diagram. It's of high importance. An important diagram, also a 4 stars diagram, doesn't have a lot to study on here. Shows you the different structures of the cerebral hemispheres, the different lobes, frontal lobe, the parietal lobe, the right and left cerebral hemispheres. A very important marking on here is the fissure that separates the right and left cerebral hemispheres from one another. It's the longitudinal fissure. Longitudinal fissure, it's the deep depression between the right and left cerebral hemispheres. A diagram of high importance also is going to be showing the different lobes of the cerebrum as well as the brainstem and the cerebellum. So again, different lobes include the frontal lobe, the parietal lobe, the occipital lobe, and the temporal lobe. Brainstem located down below the cerebrum, and posteriorly behind the brainstem we've got the cerebellum. Something that you need to be aware of is the name of the fissure that separates the cerebrum from the cerebellum. We call this fissure, it's the transverse cerebral fissure. This diagram is mainly showing the insula on here that is located deeper to the frontal and the temporal lobes. Not much to study in this diagram. I will rate this diagram a 2 stars diagram because it doesn't have much new information to study, right? So we do not spend a lot of time on this diagram. A 5 stars diagram, it's a highly important diagram that will be showing the difference between the gyrus, a sulcus, and a fissure. Also, it's showing here the different lobes of the cerebrum as well as the central sulcus, pre and post central gyri. It's a highly important diagram. It's a 5 stars diagram. Another 5 stars diagram is a diagram showing the functional areas of the brain. Primary motor cortex located in the precentral gyrus. Primary somatosensory cortex is going to be located in the post-central gyrus. In the frontal lobe, we've got the prefrontal cortex and the Broca's area, responsible for the language production, and here located partly in the parietal and partly in the temporal lobe. It's going to be the Wernicke's area, that is the association area for language production. Primary visual cortex is located, as you see on here, it's in the posterior part of the occipital lobe of the cerebral cortex. Less important brain areas on here are not highlighted. This includes the gustatory cortex in the insula, the primary auditory cortex, and its association area around. The most important ones are the ones which are highlighted in this diagram. Those are the most important markings on the diagram. It's a highly important diagram. It's a 5 stars diagram. A must be on your test, a 10 stars diagram. It's a 10 stars diagram out of 5. It has to be on your exam. It's showing here the mid-sagittal section of the brain, showing the cerebellum, the cerebrum, which is different parts, the diencephalon. This includes the thalamus, the hypothalamus, and the epithalamus, which includes the pineal gland on here. Only the highlighted structures are the ones which you are required to be able to identify on this diagram. Only the highlighted ones. Those are the most important and the only ones that you need to be able to identify on this diagram in the mid-sagittal section of the brain. Same diagram, but it's an illustration rather than an actual section of the brain. It's also still a 10 stars diagram, showing the different parts of the brainstem, the different parts of the diencephalon, the relationship between the cerebellum, brainstem, and the cerebrum. All the different highlighted markings on this diagram is highly important. This is a must be on your test. Must be on your test. It's a 10 stars diagram. A highly important diagram. It's a 5 stars diagram that shows the sagittal section of the cerebellum. You can see the arbor vitae, which is the white matter of the cerebellum on here that looks like a tree. Also, it's showing you the different lobes, anterior lobe, posterior lobe, and the flocculonodular lobe. It also shows you the relation between the cerebellum and the brain stem. If you see on here, this is my midbrain, this is my pons, and this is the medulla oblongata. The space between the cerebellum, pons, the cerebellum on one side and the pons and medulla oblongata on the other, this is my fourth ventricle. And you can see here this canal passing through the midbrain that will be connecting the third ventricle to the fourth ventricle. This is my cerebral aqueduct that we've seen in the previous diagrams. Here, this diagram, it's a highly important diagram showing the transverse or the mid-sagittal section of the cerebellum. A posterior view of the cerebellum, it has much less information compared to the previous one. I will rate it 3 stars diagram out of 5. 3 stars diagram. The only thing that is not shown in the previous one, it's the connection here between the right and left cerebellar hemispheres is going to be the verts. This is the same diagram. So I've rated still 5 stars diagram. It's the same one as this one on here, but it's an illustration rather than a section of an actual brain. A 4 stars diagram is showing the circulation of the CSF in the cerebral ventricles and around the brain and spinal cord. It's a 4 stars diagram. 4 stars diagram. The only ones that you're required to know are the ones which are highlighted on this diagram. It's a 4 stars diagram. It's important, but less important than the previous one. A section, a specimen here, brain specimen showing the different structures. It's a highly important diagram. It's a must be on your test diagram. Must be on your test, showing the different lobes of the cerebrum, frontal lobe, parietal lobe, occipital lobe, the corpus callosum, which is the white matter that connects the 2 cerebral hemispheres, this oval-shaped part of the diencephalon, it's the thalamus, and below the thalamus is going to be my hypothalamus. This is going to be my cerebellar hemisphere, the white matter of the cerebellum, arbor ID, and you see on here the different parts of my brain stem, midbrain, the bulging part on here is going to be my pons, and then we've got the medulla oblongata that connects the brain to the spinal cord. All right, it's a must be on your exam type of diagrams. It's a highly, highly important. Another very important diagram is showing the inferior surface of the brain specimen. Raises diagram, it's a 5 stars diagram because it doesn't have a lot of information for you to focus on. Another must be on your test diagram, it's a 10 stars diagram showing the sagittal section of the eyeball. Remember, the eyeball has 3 layers, an outer fibrous layer, a middle vascular layer, and an inner neural layer. The outer fibrous layer, it has an anterior part. We call the anterior transparent part the cornea. And the remaining of the fibrous layer, which is thicker and opaque, this is the sclera. The vascular layer, on the other hand, is going to be anteriorly forming the iris that has an opening at its center. We call the opening in the iris is the pupil. Located around the iris, we've got the ciliary body that will be holding the lens of the eye in its place by those fine tendons called the suspensory ligaments on here, which will be holding the lens in its place. And the rest of the vascular layers that will be lining the sclera, it's going to be my choroid. The innermost layer of the eye, it's going to be the neural layer that will be forming the retina. Important parts of the retina on here would be the macula lutea, and the center of it, it's the fovea centralis. Another important part of the retina is the part where I have the blind spot. I don't have any photoreceptors in this part of the retina. This is where I get the electrical signals conducted to reach the brain through the optic nerve. This part of the retina is what we call the optic disc. Again, this diagram, it's a must be on your test. It's a 10 stars diagram, must be on your test. A highly important diagram showing the different layers of the retina on here. And it has been magnified like this. Remember, this is a 5 stars diagram, all of it. What are the layers of the retina? You see on here, the light is passing in this direction. The very last layer that the light is gonna get in contact with is gonna be the pigmented cell layer. Those pigmented cells will absorb any extra photons that were not absorbed by the photoreceptors located in front of them. We can see two different types of photoreceptors. We've got the rods and the cones. Photoreceptors will be transforming the light into electrical impulses. And those electrical impulses are going to be traveling from the photoreceptors to the bipolar cells that will conduct them to other nerve cells with long axons. Those are the ganglion cells. The axons of the ganglion cells will be conducting the signals here, forming the optic nerves that will reach the optic chiasm and then to the brain. Again, those diagrams on here are showing you the histological structure of the retina. It's a highly important diagram. I will rate it a 5 stars diagram. This is how it looks like under the microscope, the same previous diagram, but a real histological picture. I will rate this as a 3 stars diagram. It's gonna have the same exact information like the previous ones. A 2-star diagram, nothing major here shown in the diagram. This is a picture of the fundus showing you the optic disc where I don't have much photoreceptors, where I get the axons of the ganglion cells traveling to the outside of the eyeball, forming the optic nerve. Now we've got this dark part on here on the retina. This is the macula lutea, and its center is the fovea centralis. This is where I have a very high concentration of cones responsible for the high acuity colored vision. And this is how we can focus on what we're looking at. All right, it's a two stars diagram showing the fundus of the eye on here. Important things to note are going to be the optic disc, the macula lutea, and the remaining part of the retina. Aqueous humor circulation, you see on here, the fluid filling the anterior segment of the eye between the cornea and the lens. It's called the aqueous humor. It gets produced from my ciliary body to circulate around the lens of the eye and will be traveling to fill the anterior segment in front of the pupil. And this aqueous humor gonna be drained through this clearer venous sinus located at the angle between the cornea and the iris. At the angle here, I get the venous sinuses that will allow the drainage of the aqueous humor. This diagram is of a moderate importance. I would rate it a 3 stars diagram. So most of the information on the diagram is a repeated information from the previous diagrams. A picture showing an eye specimen. This is a highly important diagram. It's a must be on your test diagram. See on here, this is the anterior aspect. This is a posterior aspect. So I've cut the eye into an anterior part and the posterior part. This is a coronal section of the eye. Looking here, this whitish part, this is going to be the cornea. And located posterior to it, you have this circular muscle. This is the iris. And the opening of the iris is the pupil that I can see the cornea through on here. Surrounding the iris, we got here, this is my ciliary body. And the continuation here of the vascular layer lining the rest of the eye is going to be the choroid. Ciliary body, as we've seen in the previous diagrams on here, it's holding the lens in its place. So this is the lens of the eye, and those filaments on here that you can see, those are going to be the suspensory ligaments. Located posterior to the lens of the eye, we've got this gelatinous substance that fills the posterior segment. We call this gelatinous filling of the posterior segment. It's the vitreous humor. So the anterior segment is filled by aqueous humor, the watery substance. The gelatinous substance that fills the posterior segment of the eye, this is going to be my vitreous humor. Another must be on your test, a 10 stars diagram. It's the diagram showing the sagittal section of the eye. It has the same exact information like our very first diagram, the cornea, the pupil, the iris, lens, anterior segment filled with aqueous humor, posterior segment filled with vitreous humor. The 3 layers on here, outermost layer is the sclera. The dark layer on here is going to be the choroid, and then the internal layer, it's the retina. Right, so This is the same information like what we've seen in this very first diagram of the eye, but it's very important for you to be familiar with its appearance on the specimen. It's a must be on your test diagram. It's a 10 stars diagram. Moving on to the structure of the ear. Ear is formed by three different parts: the external ear, the middle ear, and the internal ear or the labyrinth. External ear is going to be formed by the auricle or the ear pinna, this cartilaginous part of the ear. The external acoustic or auditory meatus that ends up conducting the sound waves to the tympanic membrane or the eardrum. Tympanic membrane is going to be vibrating in corresponding to the sound waves that have been collected by the external ear. And this vibration is going to be transmitted to three tiny bones located in your middle ear. Those are my ossicles, which we call the malleus, incus, and stapes. You see on here, the middle ear is going to be connected to the atmosphere to equalize the pressure on both sides of the tympanic membrane. The tube that connects the middle ear to the pharynx is my pharyngotympanic tube or auditory tube. This vibration transported by the three ossicles, malleus, incus, and stapes, is going to be conducted to the fluid located within the cochlea. So this is my cochlea on here. Yes, this tube is considered part of the middle ear. Yes. This tube, the pharyngotympanic tube, is considered part of the middle ear. It's going to be connecting the middle ear to the pharynx. So looking on here, those two diagrams are highly important diagrams showing the structure of external and middle ear, as well as the internal or inner ear. So the inner ear is formed of three bony cavities. One bony cavity is going to be responsible for hearing. This is called the cochlea. Another formed of two compartments. This is called the vestibule, and is going to be mainly responsible for the static equilibrium. The third set of bone cavities, those are three tubules. We call those are my semicircular canals, and they are responsible to detect the dynamic equilibrium. So again, looking here at three different compartments of the internal ear. Those are the cochlea, vestibule, and the three semicircular canals. Everything that is highlighted on this diagram is of great importance. It's a 5 stars diagram along with this one as well. Those are highly important diagrams for us. A cut section of the cochlea showing its internal structure. The cochlea is divided into three segments. Those three segments are my scala vestibuli, scala tympani, and in between we've got the scala media. And inside the scala media, this is where I've got the receptor for hearing, which is the spiral organ or the organ of Corti. The sound waves are going to be traveling from the scala vestibuli to the scala tympani, passing through the scala media, and this is going to cause the vibration of this gelatinous membrane on top of the hair cells. If you remember from the posted video recording, the vibration here is going to cause the movement of the cilia of the hair cells of the organ of Corti, and this movement is going to be translated into electrical impulses that will then be conducted towards your brain through the cochlear division of the vestibulocochlear nerve. This is a magnified diagram of the structure of the organ of Corti, or the spiral organ. It's a 3 stars diagram. I would say only the highlighted markings are the ones that you should be aware of. This includes the name of the gelatinous membranes is going to be moving in response to the sound vibrations. This is my tectorial membrane. The name of the cells forming the main structure of the receptor here, it's going to be the hair cells or the stereocilia, or the cell, I'm sorry, here, the hair cells, and the cilia here is going to be moving in response to the vibration. Those are my stereocilia. All right. Any questions? Again, where can you find this diagram? You can find it under module 4 on the home page of your Canvas course shell. So this is it on here. So when you open your Canvas course shell, you will find module 4, and under module 4 you're going to have lab exam for review, PowerPoint presentation. You can simply download this from Canvas. Any questions?